Hey everybody, Mark here for my second video in my new series on repeat vitrectomy for eye floater surgery. And today what I'm going to be talking about is why this is necessary, why I feel it's needed, and what were the circumstances that led up to me making this decision to investigate and hopefully ultimately get this repeat surgery performed. So to recap, I had a vitrectomy for eye floaters done on my left eye 8 years ago, and the surgeon at the time induced a PVD or post-vitreous detachment within that eye. So he got in to perform the surgery, and what I would consider that is a full vitrectomy, if you will. I'm not sure the appropriate terminology, but that's what I'm going to call it for purposes of my videos. He went in and with the objective to remove the vitreous jelly that was sitting there and the part that had already potentially detached, but the vitreous that was still attached, he purposefully and intentionally worked to remove that in order to, A, get any floaters that might have been noticeable that were in that part of the eye, and B, to limit the need for repeat surgery to hopefully prevent more floaters from occurring in the future when that vitreous ultimately did detach if he didn't do it intentionally. Now, what I will say is he did not remove completely 100% of the vitreous, and I think that it's important to note that that is unlikely to ever happen. Most retinal surgeons that I've listened to and have met with, even if they are wanting to induce a PVD and remove the majority of the vitreous, will leave a specific portion in there to help keep the eye intact and in place, and they will replace the rest of it with the saline solution, but they will not touch a certain area of the vitreous to leave it there on purpose. I think it's a small enough area that even if you do get floaters in there, which I do have one in my peripheral, it's going to be likely out of your central line of vision, but B, it's just not advisable to remove all of it. I don't think it's practical, and I think that it has an important function keeping the eye in place there immediately behind the retina, or by the lens. So when I say full vitreous removal, it's not 100%, it's just a high percentage. I'm not going to guess what that percentage is, but it's majority of it is gone, but not all. In my right eye, I visited a different surgeon because unfortunately, while I was very satisfied with my first procedure and the surgeon who performed it, his name is Dr. Wong. He was in Virginia. He is since retired. You guys have probably seen his videos or maybe even seen his website back when he was practicing. He was one of the first surgeons out there to really promote this cure and was really very vocal about bringing in people from around the country to his practice to help out when he knew you could not find a local practice to help you. Unfortunately, he had moved on. I don't know if he retired, but he didn't practice anymore. And I reached out to their office. He was no longer there, and he was not a surgeon anywhere else. So I think he moved, based on his LinkedIn profile, I think he's doing something behind the scenes, non-client facing. So I had to go to a different surgeon, his name is Lowry King, he's down in Charleston, South Carolina. And the point of this video is not to impugn him or to criticize his approach in any way, but ultimately the surgery that I had was not as successful, and I'm going to talk about why. And again, this is not to say that he did anything, quote, wrong. He did not plan on removing or inducing a full PVD and removing the majority of the vitreous, and that was his prerogative and his decision on what would make the procedure safest for me. So ultimately what he did was in my best interest in terms of safety for the eye, but it resulted in a less positive outcome in terms of removing floaters. I had more peripheral floaters after that procedure and few that just didn't go away, but I was okay with it. I learned to live with it. I said, you know what, my left eye was almost complete success. My right eye, which wasn't as bothersome with respect to floaters to begin with, saw probably about a 50% improvement by him just basically doing what I'm going to consider a core vitrectomy for floater surgery by removing just the bulk of the jelly, what had already detached or was not firmly attached. but he did not remove the vast majority of it the way Dr. Wong did on my left eye. So when we talked about the surgery after and the outcome that I had, he said that he tried to remove as much as he could, but he felt some resistance on the vitreous that was there in terms of trying to remove it from the rest of the eye, and it was still attached quite firmly, and he didn't feel that he could safely remove it with the vitrector without causing some type of tear, potentially even detachment, which is really a worst case scenario when you're undergoing this procedure. And he backed off, removed what he could, and said, I'm not going to touch that part of the vitreous that's firmly intact. Okay, understood, safety of the eye. Well, fast forward to today, I had that surgery done 2021, about 4.5 years ago. Unfortunately, last summer, so actually about 4 years post that procedure, I not only started to notice more clearly the floaters that had remained, but unfortunately I had a case of recurring floaters, and what I mean by that is new ones had developed. Really to the point now where I basically regressed back to where I was pre-surgery, which is a bit disheartening considering what I underwent to take the vitrectomy in the first place, to now basically be back to where I was. Now, that does not mean that the same floaters return. I mean, those floaters are removed, they're taken out with the vitreous, and they're gone. But I had new ones develop, and ones that were more in my peripheral have pushed closer into my central line of vision. I'll speculate as to why that is. I think, my opinion, and I'm going to meet with some retinal specialists in the next weeks and then in the following months to talk about this and see if a repeat procedure is going to be effective for me and safe. The vitreous that was remained intact, I feel, has probably detached, creating some new floaters, which is now very noticeable, as well as shifting the makeup of the vitreous within my eye, probably to the point where that jelly that remained is in a little bit different part of my eye, which is why those floaters that were in it initially, that weren't removed in the first procedure, have probably kind of moved closer into my central line of vision. If you look at the scope of an eye, if you figure, okay, it was here at the edge, now it's detached, drifted more into the central part of the eye, makes sense. Now I'm going to notice them more. Now they're more in my central line of vision. So that's my thesis. Regardless, whatever the reason is, I have more floaters that didn't exist before, and I'm noticing the ones more clearly that were present after the surgery. So to recap this, what I would suggest, there's two main takeaways here. One, if you're thinking about undergoing the surgery, if it's safe to do so, pursue a full and in PVD-induced procedure, because that's going to probably lead you with a better net result and also eliminate the potential, or mostly eliminate the potential for recurrent floaters in the future. However, it's also a riskier procedure by the doctor doing that, so understand that trade-off. But two, the second one is that you're more likely to have vitreous intact and firmer the younger you are. I mean, I'm 40 right now. I had this procedure done, and I was in my mid-30s. I had the first one done in my early 30s, but I've been suffering for floaters since my early 20s. If you are younger and you are to the point where the floaters are bothersome, but you're not quite sure about surgery yet, you're thinking, I might do this, I could probably live with it, etc., I would refrain from doing the surgery right away. I would wait until as long as possible, until it's so bothersome and so annoying that you really want to pursue this as an option. Because one, I think the surgeon's going to have a better chance at removing the majority of the vitreous because it won't be as intact, it won't be as firm, your eyes are older and presumably weaker. And two, you will have had longer to let new floaters develop, which will then allow the first surgery to hopefully get rid of more rather than getting rid of the ones that are there and then having new ones develop and having to go repeat it. So knowing what I know today, I would have probably wished that I had waited a few years now, seen the eyes regress, now pursued a first surgery. Now the trade-off would have been for the last 4 years, I wouldn't have had as clear vision as I had. And let me tell you, it was great. Even with only about 50% improvement, when I combined an almost 100% improvement with 50% improvement, I had a great past 4 years in terms of being almost floater-free. It was incredible, and now it's unfortunately regressed. And yes, I would have liked to only have done this procedure once, but there's no discounting the fact that I had a benefit for 4 years. But now that I know how likely recurrent floaters are if you don't do a full vitreous removal, I would suggest waiting, and I wish I had waited until as long as possible to have it done. So those are my primary takeaways for this video that I hope everyone found helpful in terms of why a repeat vitrectomy may be needed, and in my case, I'm pursuing it. And two, what I would suggest to you while watching this, if you are especially younger and dealing with floaters that are maybe not debilitating yet and are just mildly annoying yet, maybe refrain from pursuing a surgical option right away. See if things get worse and then do it. If they don't, maybe you can live with it. And if they do, well, maybe you did yourself a service by now pursuing a surgery once there's more floaters to have removed in the first place. Thanks everyone for watching. In my next video, I'm going to be talking about really focusing on the reluctance of the medical community to perform this surgery, and I'm going to give you my insight into why, and some hopeful tips to aid you if this is something you want to pursue, and how you might be able to convince a surgeon to do this on your behalf. Take care, everybody. Happy New Year.